Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we welcome Pete Briscoe. Pete spent nearly 3 decades leading a thriving megachurch in Dallas before walking through one of the hardest seasons of his life that led him into rehab, recovery, and ultimately renewal. In this episode, Pete opens up about burnout and what it looks like when everything on the outside seems successful, but the inside is breaking down. He talks about the difference between achievement and fulfillment, what it means to rediscover your humanity, and how his journey has reshaped the way he helps leaders today. Join us as we unpack how servant leadership begins not with performance, but with honesty, humility, and the courage to face our reality. Pete, thank you for joining the Servant Leadership Podcast.
Hey, Chris, and it's so awesome to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I think a lot of people will know your name from a variety of different things. And like I told you, I've known your name for more than a decade now and been following a lot of the stuff you're doing. I would love to hear what your journey has looked like throughout the years, because you've kind of had many different careers over the years.
I wouldn't say many different careers. I would say like one career for the vast majority of it. And then over the last 7 years, a lot of change in my life. So let me give you the 30,000 foot view. So I grew up in England until I was 7. We flew to America and emigrated here when I was 7 because my dad became the pastor of a church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That church became a megachurch within 2 or 3 years, became one of the very early megachurches in the early 70s. And so at dinner each night, my dad would throw out something that was happening in the church and say, "So what do you guys think we should do?" And it was a very dynamic season. It was a lot of fun. Things are fun when they're growing, right? And so it was just growing like crazy. So that's how I grew up. I went and did my undergrad and my graduate work. And then my wife, Libby, and I moved to Dallas, Texas, where I became lead pastor of a church at 28 in North Dallas. And then what happened with our church in Wisconsin then happened with our church in Dallas. And it just grew exponentially very quickly, grew 10 times in 10 years. And we had our hands full. And we were there for 27 and a half years. When I left, one of my friends said, "People have done less time for murder," which I thought was really funny. But I left because I crashed and burned. And it was a very, very hard and dark season for me and for Libby and for many people around me. I had fallen into an addiction that no one knew about. Libby figured something was up and kind of backed me into the corner, and I came clean to her. The church gave me a leave of absence. I used that time to go to 2 different rehab facilities to get clean, to get sober. I'm one day at a time, but this weekend I'm hoping to get my 7-year chip. So I've enjoyed sobriety for a number of years now, and my life of recovery has been beautiful. My wife, Libby, has told me on multiple occasions, if I ever die, she's probably not going to marry anyone else, but if she ever did, he would have to be an addict that's in recovery because the stuff that you do when you're in recovery, it's human stuff. It's you come to grips with who you are as a person. You come to grips with the deep pain that you've been carrying for a long time. And you start to work through that and you start to get to the root of things. And it's an incredible adventure. I tell people this all the time. After working the 12 steps, I think everyone should work the 12 steps, whether they're an addict or not. There's 3 or 4 steps in that process that are literally the hardest things you will ever do in your life. One of them is step 4, where you write a searching moral inventory of yourself. And you basically go through 6 or 7 different categories and you write down all the crap that you've ever done. Fun, right? It's so hard. And if you're being authentic and honest, it's incredibly brutal. You get done with it and you think, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. And you got step 5 staring you right in the face. Step 5 is you now read what you just wrote to another person. And you admit all your crap to someone else. And we don't have time for me to go into what that experience was like for me. My 5th step was one of the most profound experiences of my entire life. It was an absolutely beautiful day for me with a dear friend of mine. But anyway, boy, I'm just kind of running all over the place here, and but I came back from those experiences in rehab, and I really realized that I couldn't continue to do my role and stay sober. So I had to make a decision between continuing to do what I'd always done and being a sober human. And Libby and I had so many deep conversations about it, but it became obvious what I needed to do. So I stepped down from my role at the church. I stepped down from my role at a media ministry that my parents had kind of handed to me to lead. And we headed off into the wilderness in an RV, because we didn't have any idea what to do next. And so you asked, how did I get here today on this podcast with you? That's kind of the journey. There's a lot more to it than that, but it's been a remarkable last 7 years has been truly remarkable for me.
Well, and I know later we're going to talk more about what you're doing today, but I'd love to look back at as you were trying to figure out, like, what do you do? Because on the inside, I know you kind of felt like things were somewhat crashing and burning, or you just felt lost at certain areas. But from the outside, everyone looking at you was seeing the blessings pouring out all around you. You know, even just thinking through what was going on at the church in Dallas, it was growing like crazy. And people were coming to know Jesus, and there was a lot of cool stuff going on. And I think a lot of people who might be listening to this might be in a similar experience where from the outside, things look like they are going really well, but inside there's just something eating at them or that they're struggling with and they don't have anyone to go to. How do you encourage people throughout that process, and what takeaways can people learn from some of the hardships you went through?
Oh man, how many days do we have? I mean, Chris, I work with leaders now, with marketplace leaders, business owners, C-suite executives, academic leadership, all these kinds of very successful people. And I'm just stunned at how many of them are just struggling so deeply internally. Someone once said that there's the science of achievement and then there's the art of fulfillment. They're two very different things. So people can figure out the blocking and the tackling. They can go to school. They can go do their MBA. They can figure out how to grow a business. They can grow a business. They just discipline themselves. They work really hard. They figure out what the secret sauce is, and boom, they do it, and they've achieved, right? And they're like, that was easy. That just kind of happened. And then they try to apply the science to their inner world and to their relationships. And the problem is fulfillment has nothing to do with blocking and tackling. It's art. Fulfillment is individual for every individual. It's different for every single person. And so there's so many people out there that are doing well in whatever they've chosen to do with their career. And at the same time, they're just dying inside. There's so much addiction. There's so much shriveling relationships, especially primary relationships with partners, with their children. It's amazing how our kids grow up and then they decide to live lives differently than we decided to live. And that can create tension in a family. And a lot of times we don't know how to work through that tension in a healthy way. So I'm really stunned. I used to stand up in front of thousands of people and talk, and everyone took notes, and then everyone talked about how great it was when I was done. And that can get in your head after a while, right? And I did it for 28 years. So I loved it. I enjoyed it. I was good at it. It helped people. It was all good. I used to stand in front of thousands. Now I sit across from one. And it's a completely different experience because I've got someone sitting across from me and they're sharing what's going on in their world. And my heart gets knitted with theirs. And I want so desperately to come into their world with them and help them to navigate what I consider the really important stuff, which is the art of fulfillment, the art of getting grounded in the life that they are living, getting grounded in the relationships that they have. while they're continuing to excel at work, there's the juggling act, right? And it's an incredible experience. It's been a huge shift for me. But I mean, I know so many people listen to your podcast, Chris. So I know a lot of people are listening to me right now. And what I want to say to them is, I get it, what it feels like to have everything look like you are blowing and going on the outside. People were obviously shocked when I resigned, and later when I shared that I'd had an addiction, they couldn't believe it. They never. I mean, when you're an addict, you hide things really well, right? I had hidden it really well, and so it's shocking because everything looked perfect on the outside. I know what that feels like, and at the same time, to be just dying on the inside, just dying, and you don't have to live that way. You really don't. There is a better way to live for sure.
Well, a lot of what I hear and even feel myself sometimes is that achievement at first,
Yep.
it feels really good. And to have people
Oh,
look at you and think, boy, you're doing it right.
absolutely. Not just at first, like in the middle and at the end, it always feels good, right?
Well, and that's where like the achievement drives the fulfillment. And sometimes it's like, well, all of a sudden the achievement's not there, the outcomes aren't there, or even to realize the achievement is sometimes meaningless, in the broader scheme of life. And then when you talk
Yes.
about fulfillment, how do you even help people understand fulfillment when maybe they've never felt fulfilled in their whole life?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people like that, right? And part of it is because they don't understand that it's going to be individualized for them. And they might even go to church and the pastor stands up and says, if you want to be fulfilled, just write down these 5 steps to fulfillment and it'll happen for you, right? And so they get their notebooks out and they're writing down the 5 things and they try to apply those things to their life, and there's still no fulfillment because those 5 things, those are science, right? There, do these 5 things and you will get this result, you'll get this outcome. And life, like inner life, is just not like that. It's not remotely like that. It's art. It's different for everyone. And so there are so many people that have never really experienced fulfillment because they've never figured out who they are, how they're wired, what is really going to click for them. And so, yeah, I mean, my process is very detailed and very intense, and it's a year long. And I go one on one with someone. I spend 2 full days with them at the beginning of the process. I fly to where they are. I spend 2 8-hour days with them. We spend 16 hours together. I tell them at the beginning, you're about to talk more about yourself than you have in years. And I'm just going to keep asking you questions, and I'm going to learn where you are. And then we're going to come up with some specific steps that we're going to start taking that are completely aligned around who you are as a human being, because I want to help you in your humanity. I want you to help you be more human. And so we'll come up with a plan, and then we'll spend a whole year on Zoom calls every couple of weeks working that plan. And in that process, over time, because it's individualized, they can start to experience fulfillment, and they can start to see how they've been trying to find it in places that it's never going to achieve that. And I realize not everyone can do one-on-one coaching. I get that, but there's a need. If someone is lacking fulfillment, there's a need to figure out who you are, figure out what you really want, figure out how you're wired, figure out what your inner wounds are, figure out what the messages were that you were raised with that have deeply wounded you, like deeply wounded you. All these things come together to help make you who you are. What I learned in my first rehab, it was an incredible moment. We were all standing around. They put emotions on big pieces of paper on the floor, joy, grief, sadness, fear, just placards on the floor. And then they told us to go and stand by the one that was our primary emotion that day. And I had just arrived at rehab as the pastor of a megachurch. So I went to the anxiety one. I was feeling a little anxiety, Chris, as you can probably imagine. And then the therapist went around and talked to each of us, and she came to me. And I was so stressed that eczema had broken out all over my face. Like my face was peeling away. And she looked at me and in very loving tones, she just said to me, and this is in front of this whole room of other people that I'm there with. She just said, "Wow, Pete, you wear your emotions on your skin."
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I do. And then she asked me a question. I can't remember what the question was. And Chris, dude, my answer was brilliant. Like, I wish someone had been recording it because like I would have posted it if someone had been recording it. It was just so good, right? And here was her response to me. Her response to me was, "Nice answer, Pastor Pete. I hope I get to meet real Pete before you leave." And then she just walked away from me. And I just stood there and I'm like, what does she mean? And that was the first time I realized that I had a persona that I had been creating for 30 years that had become so much bigger than who I really was, that in rehab, I couldn't even be who I really was. I was still being Pastor Pete. They had to yell at me because I was like helping people with Bible verses in rehab. They're like, "You cannot do that here. Stop." And I'm like, I've got to be me. And it took me most of rehab to figure out what it even means to be Pete, like real Pete. And I have people now, I'll post something on Facebook or something, Chris, and I'll have people in the comments say, "Man, I wish you were just like you used to be." And I'll write back and I'll be like, "I used to be an addict. I was dying inside. I was lying to my wife. I was deceiving everyone around me. And you want me to go back to that because it serves you better? Listen to me. This is who I am now. This is what it means to be real now. Who wants to be real with me, you know?" I'm getting a little fired up. I can't even remember what you asked me.
Well,
I hope I'm
I
answering.
love that because really you went from leading a megachurch and working with this ministry where you're impacting millions of people every year, many millions of people. And they do have this perspective of like, gosh, Pete is just feeding into me and I am benefiting so much. Then you go on this process of additional self-discovery where really it's like, gosh, I really need to figure out like who I was made to be and who I am.
Yeah.
And then you took it a step further of, gosh, I have been blessed by the last 6-7 years that now I need to change the message. It's not that the previous message was necessarily bad, but who you were doing it wasn't the right fit. Right. And now
Yes.
it's like, gosh, this is what I was created to do. So talk about the journey of now, like you going from through this crazy process of rehab to now realizing like, gosh, this is what I was made to do.
Oh, it's so complicated, Chris. Like it's just not simple. Life is not simple. It's complex. So if you were to just ask me straight up, um, like, what do you think you were made to do? I think I would still like, I'm not just talking about doing the world. I'm just talking about like, what are you wired to do? Like, what are you really good at? I would say I was made to stand up in front of people and talk, because it just always works. Like whenever I'm up in front of people, it just works. It's like so natural to me. And I've been coaching communicators for years now, and I help them see some things, and then they still don't do it. And I'm like, why didn't you just do it? And they're like, I'm trying, and it's hard for me because it just seems so obvious. And so I think that's like my sweet spot, and I'm not doing that now. So like there's grief there because man, I used to love preaching. Like, you know, in my preaching life, I preached over 5,000 times. Like, it was a big part of my life, and I loved it. And there was part of that was it was my persona that loved it, and there's a bunch of stuff with that, right? So there's triggers involved and all these kinds of things. But to this day, if you were to ask me what are you made to do, I would say I'm going to just stand up in front of people and talk.
Hmm.
And so there's a degree to which my coaching is a way for me. I realize this is something I feel like I can do that won't bring all that trigger stuff with me, because I'm not standing in front of a bunch of people with lights on me and everyone's going, oh. It's like just one person who's saying, oh, help me. And that's a totally different world, right? And I can enter into that and I can find joy in that, and I can help people that way one at a time. And so I'm starting to speak again, and but now I'm not preaching anymore. But I really want to help people in the marketplace. I want to help teams in the marketplace. I want to help them rediscover their humanity, because I think so much of the marketplace is dehumanizing. We become a number in big companies, or even in small companies, we can become just basically what our role is. And if we're executing it well, we get to stay. And if we're not, we're probably shown the door, and that's a lot of pressure. And so it's a dehumanizing process oftentimes in the marketplace. And I just so desperately want people to be human again. Like, I feel like we're losing our humanity. And I think we can see that in the social media world. We can see that in the divisiveness in our nation. We can see it in so many different ways. It's like we've forgotten how to be human. We've forgotten how to feel like a human. We've forgotten how to relate like a human. And so, that's my goal now, is to help people be human again, either in a one-on-one setting or in a group setting or in a setting in front of a group of people. And that I love. And so, yes, it's shifted, and I have grief around what I don't get to do anymore. And at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit here and think back. I'm just going to look forward, and what can I do, and how can I help people? How can we help people? It's a really good question.
Well, in the industry, like just in the workplace setting, you often hear about top-down leadership, and leadership starts at the top, and all these great, amazing terms that are like take ground and take charge. One of the things that we constantly talk about here related to servant leadership is that everyone has influence. And one of the things I think that you do, you kind of see both sides of it, because you are working with a lot of corporate executives, nonprofit executives, people who are leading things. But I think part of what you're doing too is going into these organizations and helping people realize their own humanity and the value that they're adding exactly where they're at, and that they matter just as much as the leadership. When you hear kind of some of those concepts, how do you approach that when you're stepping into some of these workplace settings and working with teams, not just in the one-on-one settings with the top leadership?
I was a basketball player in high school and college, and I use that term loosely. I enjoyed it. I made the team, and then I got to cheer from the bench. That was my basketball career. But what I love about sports, and all three of our kids played sports. What I love about sports is just the whole team thing, and how when teams work like they're supposed to. It's why I love basketball. I think it's the ultimate team sport. When teams play the way they're supposed to, it's just beautiful. And if one person isn't playing their role up to their potential, the whole team suffers. And I know this is a very tired analogy, and everyone's heard it, but I really love to see teams that work well really together. I work with pastor of a large church, one of my clients, and I also meet with him and his elders whenever I go to see him. And we've worked together for a number of years, and I tell him all the time, your elder team is just truly incredible, the way they work together. I just love the dynamic. I love the way they listen to each other. I love the way they grapple. And whenever I see a team that is just functioning on all cylinders like that, it's just so incredibly encouraging. So all this to say, everyone on the team plays a role. The role is absolutely imperative. And the best leaders know this. The best leaders know that every single person that is working towards the vision of the company is an incredibly important piece of the puzzle, and they're treated with respect, and they're treated with humanity, and they're given opportunities to advance if they desire to do that. And just all the things that really good companies do. It's because they see their people as humans. I really believe that the best companies see their people as human beings, and they treat them with compassion and grace, and with honesty and authenticity, like we should treat every human.
I'm curious, and I've never really thought of this until you're talking about this, but we talk a lot about servant leadership. And typically, I would just ask how you saw servant leadership play out in your roles and throughout this journey. But another aspect that I'm really curious of, thinking of your story, is sometimes when you're leading really well from the outside, you are dying on the inside and you're just burning out. How do you effectively balance servant leadership in this whole concept of burnout? Because you probably don't realize you're burning out along the way until you've really burnt out. At least that's kind of my guess. And you just end up in a place where you're like, how did I get here?
Absolutely. Yep.
How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I've never met anyone who graduated from college and said, I'm going to work until I crash and burn in my 30s. Woohoo! No one starts out that way, right? We give ourselves much more credit for what we're able to do and to carry than is wise. And you're right, all of a sudden something hits you from behind and you're like, wait, what in the world? And it was staggering to me the first time someone used the word addiction with me. Because an addict doesn't think they're an addict. And you just think, well, I got a problem or I got a sin struggle or whatever you want to call it. And I didn't even know, like looking back now, I look at it, it's like, oh my goodness, just absolutely quintessential addiction. But when you're in it, you don't think that. And you think you're just having a hard time, or you just got to numb a little bit to get by. It's not that big a deal. And you don't realize. So it creeps up on you, and then all of a sudden it body slams you. And obviously we want to keep people from getting to that place if at all possible. So servant leadership, I have a really simple definition of servant leadership. It's overly simplistic, but leadership is just one difficult conversation after another. Leadership is just one awkward conversation after another. That's really all it is. What you are bringing as a leader, and obviously you're bringing vision casting and you're bringing a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, the best leaders are the ones that are eager to have the awkward conversations one after another. And I'm looking at your face while I'm talking about this, and I see your eyes going sideways, and I'm imagining that you've got a couple awkward ones that you have to have because you're running a company, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, right, Chris? It's like the hardest conversations end up on your desk because no one else wants to do them, and they're the ones you have to do. And the way that you go about those conversations is the way that you're serving your people and the way that you're leading your people. And it's obviously decision-making. It's all these things. But it's unnaturally exhausting when your company or your nonprofit grows beyond what you thought it was going to grow. And all of a sudden you're scrambling to hire people and to create structures and all these kinds of things. It's an unnatural position for one person to be in. I'm absolutely convinced of this. When I talk to my clients and they tell me the breadth of their responsibilities, sometimes I just have to sit back and I'm like, how do you even get out of bed in the morning? Like, it's just, the weight of it is just incredible. And so I think we put too much on ourselves. I think, and we don't delegate the way that we should. Because we tend to be a little bit of control freaks when we're the point leader, and so we want to control things, so we don't delegate it the way we should. And there's multiple ways to address the issue, but you got to figure out why. You got to figure out why burnout is running you down from behind and about to tackle you, and it's going to hurt. And it's different. It's different for everyone. Fulfillment is art. These inner world things are art. They're not science.
Well, and that's where I start to wonder, like, if somebody came to you 15 years in or 20 years in or 25 years in, like before you came to your own realization of like, gosh, I need to change something, or something's got to change here. It's not working. People are slowly burning out in so many cases and not realizing it. And from the outside, when somebody says like, you've got too much going on, the initial thought back might be like, they don't understand how much capacity I have, or they don't understand how gifted I am, or whatever the things are, like how excited I am about my work, because it's truly exciting, and how do you even start those conversations with people when it's like, sitting there, maybe you're like, I probably wouldn't have believed it either. Somebody told me I'd be here.
I totally I totally relate to what you're saying, Chris. The way I start the conversations is with 16 hours of questions, like 2 full days. I call it my intensive, my on-site intensive, 2 full days of me asking questions. And I do that for two reasons. One, because I'm trying to learn my client and what their challenges are so I can help. But what's truly remarkable is how often, as they're just answering my questions, I see light bulbs go on and they're like, wait a minute, that means X or that means Y, or maybe that's why my wife feels distant from me or what. And it's just like, they're just, they haven't thought about it because they haven't had to. They're just grinding. They're just charging up the next hill. And so they haven't even thought about it. And just someone just asking them questions, all of a sudden these light bulbs start going off all over the place. And so a lot of times, I mean, I think if anyone is struggling, I think it would be wise to get with a therapist and say, I'm just struggling. I don't know why. I mean, that's one thing that everyone can do. There's coaches like me. There's other coaches out there that can come alongside you too. There's a plethora of resources online now. That the explosion of content is just mind-boggling and negative on so many fronts. Some of it, however, is really, really good and super helpful. And so find really, really good and super helpful people and learn from them. But it comes down to awareness, like being aware that I'm not doing great. I know it looks to everyone else like I'm doing great because everything's going great, but I'm not doing great. It's going great, but I'm not doing great. There are different things, right? And awareness says I'm not doing great. The next level of awareness is, here are some of the reasons why I'm not doing great. And that requires authenticity and honesty with oneself. And we just don't do a whole lot of that anymore, Chris. It's almost like if we're not in therapy, if we don't have a coach, if we don't have someone that's come alongside us to help us with these kinds of questions, we just never get around to asking them. And so I think it really comes down to awareness, starting to ask the real questions, and then not just saying, oh, this is overwhelming, but to actually start to address some of those issues. Otherwise, you're going to get blindsided from the backside, and your nose will be in the dirt, and it'll be hard, really hard. I know. My nose was in the dirt. I remember it. It's not fun.
Well, and this is where I feel like you could do a whole year's worth of podcast episodes on just how do you deal with this and the journey of self-discovery that people are on in the conversations with you. And then it's like, it's not going to be, okay, I spent 16 hours with Pete and now it's like, I figured out everything. It's like, that is the start of a journey that's a lifelong journey, and I love how
Absolutely.
You've even talked about some of the stuff you've been through with rehab. It's like you are in the middle of continuing to be in the process. It's not like, wow, it's just fixed. It's like you're 7 years in, which is amazing, into this awesome journey. And it's going to be hopefully decades more. But it definitely is more of a journey than like the quick win that everyone is looking for online, it feels like.
Oh, dude. Oh, you're so right. There's a 12-step group that we've traveled around the country. We always wintered in Tucson, Arizona. There's a 12-step group here that I've been going to for 7 years when we're here in the winter. And there are multiple people in that group that have been sober for over 30 years. One woman has been sober for 38 years, I believe. And they're there every Saturday. And they're there because they want to help other people that are struggling and that are coming into the group. And everyone in that group will tell you, you're an addict. You're probably an addict for life, but you're an addict in recovery. And recovery is a beautiful way to live, like an incredibly cool way to live. And it's a lifelong journey for sure. And what takes you 40 or 50 or 60 years to create, you don't dismantle in 30 minutes watching a podcast. Like this takes work. Like I mean, this is a question I ask people all the time. Like, are you doing your work? Like,
Mm.
whatever your work is, are you doing it? And a lot of times I get kind of that look that a dog gives you when they've heard a sound for the first time, where they kind of tilt their head and they're like, "What?" And then often other times people will say, "Yeah, I'm doing my work. Here's what I'm working on right now." And it's like growing adults, they're doing their work. They
Mm.
know what the work is. They're going after it. They're doing their work. They're not just numbing by working harder. They're actually doing their work. And that's a beautiful way to live. And that is a lifelong journey for sure. Doing your work is a lifelong journey.
Well, and I think for those that are listening to this and they're like, I just need to figure out what the journey even looks like, the starting point. We're going to throw in some resources where they can just go check out some of the stuff you're doing. Because I know you talk about this, you write about it, you coach people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to link to make that easy.
Okay, awesome.
With our last 60 seconds, I want to hit you with 10 rapid fire questions.
6 seconds each. Okay.
The first thing that comes to mind. Who do you think of when I say servant leadership?
Well, obviously, Jesus.
That's good. 5 words that most describe you.
Alive. Oh, man. Kind. Loyal. Growing. At peace.
Love that. Favorite author or book?
Oh, man. That's brutal. My favorite novel is Tale of Two Cities by Dickens. And it's a mesmerizing, heart-thumping last third of that book. And there are very few books that literally increase my heart rate. That one did.
Favorite food?
I'm not a foodie, so I see it as fuel, and sometimes I even forget to eat. Um, but I will say, I'll say a good old-fashioned meat and potato uh, dinner, like prime rib or something, and mashed potatoes. That sounds good to me.
All right. Favorite thing to do in your free time?
I love when Libby and I are hiking. We've traveled for the last 6 years. We've been to 44 national parks and done some of the best hikes in the world. And that's my happy place when we're out hiking. And she's walking in front of me, and I'm watching her ponytail go back and forth as she's striding, and we're talking and we're enjoying the nature. And that's my favorite thing.
All right. Is there any surprising fact about you?
No, I can't think of anything.
All right. Where's favorite place you've been?
Man, these are hard, Chris.
You've been a lot of places.
Okay, I'm just gonna just say what came to my mind. So Libby and I did one of our bucket list hikes this last year, and it's called Angel's Landing in Zion National Park.
Sweet.
And it's absolutely terrifying. And the way it worked out, because of the weather and everything, we got to the top of Angel's Landing and we had the summit completely to ourselves, which everyone should Google Angel's Landing video and just see what I'm talking about. It's 2,000-foot drops on either side of a 3-foot wide path. It's horrifying and spectacular, and that was an amazing space.
My palms are sweaty just thinking about that. Last 3, is there somewhere you want to go that you have not been yet?
My parents did a trip up the fjords in Scandinavia on a little mailboat, and I've often thought that I would love to. That scenery seems to be something I've never seen anything like, so I'll throw that one out.
All right. Best advice you've ever received?
Go to rehab.
Love it. And finally, why do you think a podcast on servant leadership is good for people to listen to?
Because leadership is one of the most extraordinarily complex endeavors that someone can enter into. And so there's literally thousands of things to talk about when it comes to leadership. And it's inexhaustible as far as the things that you need to learn if you want to be an effective and a helpful leader. And so I think everyone should listen to your podcast, Chris. That's what I think.
Well, Pete, thank you for jumping on. Thanks for opening up and sharing your story, because I think it is so relatable to almost everyone, if not everyone listening to the podcast. And at the same time, so many people are just living in that life that maybe you were in before where they weren't truly free. And so it's just amazing hearing about your journey.
Chris, I really appreciate you having me on. And I love, if you're okay with me saying this, please, if anyone's listening to me and they think that working with me in a coaching relationship would be something that would be helpful for them, I'm hoping in the show notes or whatever this looks like, you could put my webpage and you can just reach out to me. My email address is there on my webpage at petebriscoe.com, and just reach out to me and we'll have a phone conversation and we'll see if it's something we want to do.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that's easy for anyone looking in the description wherever you're watching or listening. Thanks again, Pete.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.